Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Curcio and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. I have a fancy fold card for you today called an interlocking gatefold. I'm using the Truly Tailored Bundle, which is the stamp set and the coordinating punch, to create this really fun interlocking fold for this card. I'm going to give you lots of tips along the way, including how to reinforce that gate opening, because you know it's going to be open and closed quite a bit. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's project. Here's a good close-up of this card we're going to be creating today. So it opens through that oval. Isn't that neat? The great thing about this is you know who's going to get it is going to want to open and close it quite a bit. And it's easy to create. Keep in mind that I'm using ovals today, but you could use circles or squares as well. Actually, any shape, as long as you have nesting framelits. Nesting framelits would be something like this. These are the layering ovals, and you can see that there's graduated sizes. I've pulled out the two that we're going to use today, as well as scallops. So you have a choice here on whether you want a layer that's simple or decorative. That's just really a great buy with that collection of framelits. Everything you see here today is available online in my store, or I'd be happy to send you a copy of the current catalogs. If you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you would like complimentary copies, please leave me a comment below and I'll be happy to get in touch with you to get your address. We're going to start with a piece of Night of Navy cardstock. You will be able to find all the cutting dimensions along with pictures and supplies over on my blog. If you're here from YouTube, that link is right down in the description bar below. I'm going to be using my Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer. Love this trimmer because there is a light blade for scoring and a dark blade for cutting. So it's definitely a 2-in-1. There is an extension arm here that goes to a clear 14.5 inches, so you've got plenty of room to do your 12 by 12 cardstock. We're going to need to do some scoring first to get that gate fold. I'm going to score from each end to make it easier. And I'm going to score at 2 1/8. For those of you that are not really great with the ruler, I totally get it. So I'm going to help you out. 2 1/4 would be this first longer notch, and the 1/8 would be that long notch between the 2 and the 1/4. So I'm going to line this up. You're going to need to be precise on this, otherwise it's not going to meet very well. So I'm going to use that light blade, making sure my paper is aligned right across the top so that it's nice and straight, and then I'm going to go ahead and score. I'm going to turn my cardstock now, and I am going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm lining it up at the 2 1/8, making sure it's straight across the top, and then I'm going to score. I've got my bone folder here. That's going to help ensure we've got nice crisp edges. So I'm going to go ahead and fold those in. If you find that yours are not meeting all the way in the center, chances are that you didn't score precisely, which is okay. Go ahead and take your bone folder and make that slight adjustment now. Just give the cardstock a little tiny pull and then just line it up where you want it and then crease. Do you have to score? No, you don't. You can do this by hand, but I'll be honest with you, I found that the paper had some like cracking along the sides as I was trying to find the center. So I find scoring to be a lot easier. I also cut 2 pieces of Designer Series paper. This is from the True Gentleman Designer Series paper. Most of the Stampin' Up! Designer Series papers are double-sided, giving you lots of options. That designer paper is found here in the Occasions catalog. This is on page 45. You can see there's just a beautiful array of patterns, and it's great because it's masculine. These panels are going to go on the gate panels here of our card, so I'm going to flip those over. I'm going to use my snail adhesive and provide some strips of adhesive across the center, and then I'm going to mount those here on the panels. I have better luck leaving it open, so I'm just going to line those up, leaving a border all the way around. I'm going to do the same thing now with this one. So now you can see we have the panels completed. I have a piece of very vanilla cardstock, and I'm going to be using the Night of Navy ink pad. I love the color coordination with the Stampin' Up! Products, as well as the Designer Series paper and accessories. I'm grabbing the stamp from the stamp set that's called Truly Tailored, and you can see here there's lots of fun images inside, definitely geared towards a masculine theme. The bow tie, of course, there's some really cute Aztec designs and very modern as well as varied greetings. The one great thing about the stamp set is it's offered also as a bundle, which means it would come with this, the tailored tag punch. And of course, that's going to punch out those shapes and those words that you see here. So I've mounted to a classy guy, and I'm going to ink that up on my Night of Navy pad, and then I'll stamp that here on my scrap cardstock. I'm going to use my tailored tag punch, and I'm just going to flip that over so I can see where I'm going, and then go ahead and line that up, and then punch that out. And that's going to be for the greeting on the outside oval. I've got my Big Shot here with the magnetic platform. That's my platform of choice when I'm using framelits to help keep the paper in place. There's a nice contact between that metal framelit and the magnetic platform. I'm putting a clear cutting mat on the bottom to protect it. And I'm going to use 2 pieces of Night of Navy cardstock scraps, and I'm going to line those up. To create that thin oval for the front of the interlocking portion of the card, I've got 2 of the oval framelits. You see how close they are in size. So I'm going to put the large one here on top, and then I'm going to put the smaller one in on the inside. Now it's very important that you get these as even as possible, and then use a Post-it note. It's just a great tip to secure them in place. Put that Post-it note right across the cardstock and the framelit. And then go ahead and put your clear mat over the top, and you're going to crank those through twice. You're going to go there and you're going to go back. You may hear a popping at the end. That's fine. That's all normal because of the rollers. The reason we're doing this twice is we're going through 2 layers of cardstock, and we want to make sure it's going to cut all the way through. So before I go too crazy, I like to flip it over, and I like to make sure that I've got a cut all the way through, and you can see that I do. So I'll go ahead and remove my Post-it note. I often save that if it's still in great shape and then reuse it. And then I'll remove the dies. And then you're going to see here, I'm going to wiggle out the center, that we're going to end up with 2 of the ovals that we're going to use on our card. While I have my Big Shot out, I've also got a piece of Tranquil Tide cardstock, and I'm using the smaller of that same oval we just used. And I'm going to die cut one of those as well, because this is going to house the greeting that's going to go in between that frame we just created. And just because it's 1 layer of cardstock, I only have to crank it through once. That'll give us that real nice oval shape. I have my silicone craft sheet here. I absolutely love this product. Adhesive or glue will not stick to it, as well as hot glue. So if it gets on your surface, it literally just rubs right off. So I'm going to go ahead and put those 2 thin frames on my silicone craft sheet. Now you can use adhesive. Let me just give you a quick little idea of how this works. You can see the adhesive will kind of cake around the outside, but the good news is it won't stick to your work surface. Sometimes though, you might find that it kind of overlaps a little bit on the front, and if that happens, you can go ahead and just wipe it off. You can also use the multi-purpose glue, but if you use this, I want you to use it extremely sparingly. As a matter of fact, I like to put it on a Stampin' Sponge and then tap it on my frame so that I don't have it all over. It doesn't dry completely clear, so you're going to need to make sure you keep that in mind and not get it underneath the right side of the frame. Just for the sake of the video and time, because that takes a little bit longer to dry, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my snail adhesive, and I'm going to give you some tips along the way about how we're going to make sure that we don't have adhesive on the front. Now remember, we're going to put the 2 frames together. And you can see, just like I said before, we've got a little bit of adhesive around the sides. And because I don't have to worry about drying time with adhesive, I can take my time and make sure that it looks really good. And then we are going to line these up, one directly over the other. You want to be as precise as possible because you don't want one a little bit longer or shorter than the other so that the oval doesn't fit through that interconnection. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip, and I'm just going to rub from the back. You're going to need to be generous with your adhesive. You don't want an area that's going to lift as well. Remember that greeting that was stamped and punched? We've got our oval. I'm going to flip that over, and I'm going to put some dimensionals on the back. And I'm going to be very, very generous with these because I want to make sure that it's well balanced as it goes through that connection on the front. So I'm going to put 1 in each of these corners here. I'll take off that paper backing. If you're having trouble getting the backing off like I am, here's a tip for you. Take your fingernail, press it in the center of the dimensional. That lifts the outside edges, making it a lot easier for you to take off. And then this is going to get mounted right in the center of that oval. Here we are at the base of our card, and this is where we're going to mount the oval. We're only going to place adhesive on half, and you're going to be generous with your adhesive to make sure that it's tacked down. This end has to stay open. So again, I'm going to bring in my silicone craft sheet and just checking to make sure we've got it on the right side. So it's going to go here. I'm going to start here about the halfway point, and I'm going to run adhesive all the way to the edges. I want to make sure it's good and stuck. If you like tear and tape or fast fuse, that works just as well. Again, I'm going around the edges to make sure I don't have any adhesive showing, and then I'm going to center this on the front of the card. I'm lining up the points of this image right along the crease of my gatefold, and then I'm going to flip and I'm going to rub from the back. Give that a good press to make sure that it's in place. You can see how this opens. The next step is to adhere that interlocking portion. This is where you're going to need to be precise so that it travels clearly. So we're going to turn this over, and again, just like before we did here, we're only going to put adhesive on half. Now if you need to, I'm going to recommend that you flip it over from the back. Make sure you have it lined up really well. Grab yourself a pencil and make a mark just slightly shallow of the crease. So I'm not going to go all the way, but I want to make sure I'm going to get close. I don't want adhesive on the area where it could catch here. So you can see I've got my back side, and I'm going to use my adhesive again, and of course you can use your liquid glue. And I'm placing that all around here. With the front of the card closed, you're going to line up this left side right over this oval. Don't press until you're sure that it fits nicely. And then go ahead and just trace it with your finger. And then you're going to be able to open and close your card. The pencil marks are not even going to be visible because remember we made them a little shallower than what we needed, and there's no adhesive here, and that's what allows this interconnection. Let's decorate the inside of the card. I've cut a small piece of very vanilla cardstock, and from that exact same stamp set I pulled out the greeting, "Today is your day, celebrate in style." And I'm going to use that same ink pad. Just one ink pad's all that was needed for today's project. That's the Night of Navy, and I'm going to stamp that here near the top. Well, that's not very straight. So you know what? 2 sides to every piece of paper. Let's flip that over. Let's try this again. Nice, firm, even pressure. That's much better. So on my back side, which is my oops side, we're going to go ahead and add adhesive so we can mount this to the inside of our card. And then that is going to go here in the center panel of our card base. I'm looking to leave a small border at the top and the bottom as well, and then I'll just go ahead and press that in place. And then we've got the interconnection. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of the coordinating embellishments that are part of this suite. These are called the True Gentleman buttons, and you're going to find those here on the same page that we talked about the designer series paper. I actually threaded the holes, but those of you that are thinking, oh my gosh, it's really quite easy. I cut myself about 8 inches of linen thread, and I'm just going to run that through the hole from the top. So I've got one end going here, and I'm going to come across. I'm going to even up my ends. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up to the opposite hole. So I've got one here. I'm going to flip that over. I'm going to do the other one here. And I'm going to tie this. Let me bring in my mat so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to tie that. And I'm going to make a knot because I want to make sure that doesn't come out. And you see, by giving yourself at least 8 inches, you're going to ensure that you're not fussing with a little tiny piece of linen thread. I'm going to use my paper snips. And I'm going to cut that the length of my button. And then I'm going to grab my glue dots. This is a pretty good size button. So I'm going to add a couple to the back. I'm just going to take the button and I'm going to press it right on the glue dot, and then I'll lift and I'll do the same thing down here. So I've got 2 glue dots on there, and then I'll decide where I want that. I think I'm going to put that right down here near the bottom, and I'll press that in place. Here's the one I created before you joined me. Do you see how I actually made a bow on this one? If you don't want to thread the button, go ahead and use a glue dot after you make your bow and then just attach it to the center of the button. That's a great little cheap method and make it look exactly as if it was threaded. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. Remember to head over to my blog for the pictures and the cutting dimensions for today's project. While you're there, I'll have a list of the supplies as well, and I offer great and exclusive online ordering rewards. All the information is there. Thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.